All right, we got a lot on the docket today. It's another time for a reaction video. It's been a very chaotic couple of weeks, and Neil and I will give quick updates, but I'll just tell you what's on the docket today before we get started. We're going to be talking about Dave Portnoy buying a Barstool Sports back for $1, MrBeast getting sued for $100 million, WP, which is a large ad holding company, lowering their guidance. We're going to talk about down rounds, kind of what's happening in the venture world and how that relates to marketing. We are also going to be talking about how Forbes does SEO, a little bit of that. And we'll also be talking about how Barbie actually spent over 150 million, I believe, on marketing. So we'll do a little recap of that one, and also a recap of the Leveling Up Founders Mastermind that we just did. So that was this past week in LA. And I'll actually let Neil kick it off because he could update everyone maybe on why it was chaotic and also his thoughts on the event.
So the event was overall really good, and you guys are going to hear some podcast episodes from some of the speakers coming up on the Marketing School podcast. So you'll get quite a bit of insights. And there were some really good talks from macroeconomics to what's happening, how it's going to affect marketing and business, to how to do M&A to grow faster, to how to invest more in personal branding and how to do it right from someone who spends over $60 million a year on influencer marketing. And when I look at the event overall, it was great. Venue was amazing. The food, I think you did level up the food as well. It was a Wolfgang Puck restaurant. I think that used to be a restaurant too. I could be wrong, but I think it was.
No, you're right.
Before. So overall, I was really pleased with the event. I didn't get as much out of the event as I wanted to, and had nothing to do with the event. Right now, my wife and I are in the middle of a big move, and the move is really chaotic, and I only have a few weeks left to move. So we're interviewing builders, trying to find homes to buy instead of building. We brought our kids with us, trying to find new schools to put our kids in. So when you start combining a lot of this kind of stuff, it just started adding up where we were just like, okay, this is really chaotic and this is going to be tough. And for that reason, I didn't get to spend as many hours with the attendees and the other members of the mastermind that I would have liked. I went to the first networking night. I went to the lunches on both days. I attended some of the sessions, but I wish I was there for the whole time. And that was my biggest regret from the event. I was looking forward to hearing some of the speeches. Larry Kim, I heard the second half of his speech. I can't wait to get the recording because the second half was amazing. And I heard the first half was great as well. I missed Devin's speech. I've known Devin for years and I already knew what he was going to talk about, but still there's always amazing nuggets in there that can really help from a marketing end. But yeah, biggest regret was I just didn't spend enough time at the mastermind due to personal reasons.
Cool. I'll share some. So as Neil mentioned, we'll share some of the clips from some of the talks, not exactly the full things in the upcoming weeks. And we'll share the whole thing of the marketing school Q&A that's become a tradition that Neil and I do. It's easy for us. We kind of riff. Sometimes we'll agree on stuff. Sometimes we'll disagree on stuff. And it's just a fun time. Just a recap. So Neil, this was actually the highest scoring mastermind. The NPS score was 100. That's the absolute maximum you can get. Just for reference here, it's not exactly apples to apples. No pun intended, but Apple NPS is 73 and a typical good NPS score is 54. So ours is 100.
But that's in quantity. That's in quantity, right? So yeah. Apple has so many people filling it out.
Yeah. So 73, like on volume, it's like the whole world, right? And which is, again, it's not an apples to apples comparison here. And then most of our speakers got above 60, which is pretty good for an NPS score. And what I will say is I'll just share a couple stories here before we move on to the next topic. We talked about the NPS score. It was hosted at the Beverly Wilshire, and we had about 90-ish people come through. And so here's a couple stories. One guy in the company, his business does about $500 million, $600 million a year. It's a family business. And he was trying to figure out how to divest from the company. And actually, he found the perfect person to talk to. And another person in the group is looking to perhaps buy two companies, not just one, but two companies from within the group, okay? And one person actually reached out to me and offered up their business potentially for sale, right? And so those are conversations, the high-level conversations that are happening in the group. I'm going to share my screen real quick. Those of you that follow us on YouTube, if you're not, you're missing out. But you can see over here, we had a dinner on the first night. Neil, unfortunately, was unable to make it. The screen's trying to pop up right now. It'll pop up when it does pop up. And if it doesn't, I'm just going to keep moving along. So let me stop sharing and let me reshare again. You didn't see it, right?
No, I just saw 3 dots.
Here. Let's do this. Okay, there we go. You see that?
Yes, now I see it.
Okay, cool. So this was a dinner on the first night, mostly speakers. And then this guy over here, Ravi. So he's from Microsoft Clarity. And special thanks to the Microsoft team, Ravi and Scott, for sponsoring the event. And he actually had one of the highest rated talks. And then Devin, who you just mentioned over here, he's a fellow YPO member. He is really good at buying businesses and he's really good at terms. So he talked a lot about terms, deal terms and all that, and M&A. And his score, his MPS score was 100. And there's only one other party that got 100, right? And so anyway, this is Syed over here, just a great group, Jasmine Starr and Steve from Pray.com. Anyway, and Dan Fleischman over here. But we'll continue on. I'm not gonna go through the entire summary here, but the other thing too with this thing is we did pickleball. Not everyone came to pickleball, but pickleball was really fun. We did a National Pickleball Day. And the final thing I'll say is I always like giving away books, right? So this time was really special. Neil, I don't know if you know this. You probably didn't even pick one up, but you probably weren't even aware. But this book is written by Stripe Press. It's called Scaling People, and it's like the modern day how to high output management. So it's a management book basically. And you can't buy this on Amazon, the physical copy. You can't get it right now. And so we had to work out a special deal with them. And Tamara from Stripe Press was gracious.
Why can't you get it out? Or why can't you buy it?
It's like in high demand. That's why.
It's sold out.
Yeah. You can buy the Kindle version if you want, but it is what it is. So anyway, that's it on the event. Speaking of which, Neil and I were talking, and feel free to tweet or DM me, but we're actually considering doing a general public kind of marketing school event again, just because our events team, Evolve Events, Deanna from the Evolve Events team, Carol, they did such a good job. And we're just like, dude, if it's such a good job and we don't need to worry about that much, then we'd be open to it because Neil and I are going to be living really close to each other. So that's that. Next topic is, you can pick from the list.
Let's talk about Barstool Sports. If the story's been going viral on how we pretty much got the company for free, that is actually not true. It's the furthest thing away from the truth, because in there, I don't know if you saw the fine print, depending on how he monetizes, if monetization happens, they get a cut of all the revenue.
The only thing I saw, Neil, was if he sells the company, they get 50% in proceeds. Are there other terms?
Monetization as well. I read an article. I don't know how accurate it was, but it said if he monetizes, they get a cut of the revenue.
Oh, okay. That's a big difference than if he sells, he gives up 50%. Because I'm like, technically, if he bought it for $1 and if he sells, he gives up 50%, but he keeps it forever, he really got it for free. But if there's all these other terms, then it's actually, it's not exactly like the headline.
Yeah, but a lot of people are saying he just took away the company for free. That is not true. They're getting depending on how he monetizes, they can make money there, at least from the article I read. And if he sells, they can also make money there.
It's still a good deal though.
It's still a good deal, but it makes logical sense, right? You're just like, this isn't doing really well within our organization. Let's spin it out. Let's give it back to the founder, let him run it, and let's make the best of this situation and still have potential upside.
I just think it just goes to show, I don't know if his payout was like 800 million or something like that. It just goes to show that buying these media companies and trying to just continue to monetize it through media isn't necessarily the play. We've talked about on the podcast here, if you're going to build the attention, if you're going to build media, have a monetization model, like an agency, for example, like what both of us are doing here, or what Gary Vee is doing.
Or even MrBeast is creating products and using the media to monetize his products. And funny enough, speaking of MrBeast, he got sued, right? $100 million.
Yeah, that's our next topic over here. So the headline here is he got sued for $100 million by the MrBeast burger chain that was fulfilling for him. So do you know about the details of the story or no?
No, I don't know the details of the story. I saw that he was getting sued though.
Okay. So from what I'm hearing, I think he's trying to get out of his contract, but because he's such a big name, here, I'm going to pull up the article over here. Because he's such a big name, like if I were the kind of virtual burger kind of fulfillment company, I would be suing the crap out of him. So let me just share my screen over here and we can go through this together. So you see this, yes?
Yes.
Okay. So let's go through a couple. Virtual Dining Concepts and Celebrity Virtual Dining, VDC, are suing the YouTuber and his Beast Investments for failing to honor his contractual obligations, as well as intentional tortuous interference. Damages are alleged to exceed $100 million. And so blah, blah, blah. Okay. Let's look at this over here. Jimmy, who's MrBeast, Jimmy Donaldson, sued VDC and his parent company last month, seeking to terminate the deal for his restaurant chain, alleging, among other things, that the burgers it served were disgusting, revolting, and inedible, and damaged his reputation. Last week, VDC fired back, calling the YouTuber's lawsuit meritless and ill-advised, claiming that Donaldson had breached his agreement with the virtual restaurant company and recently attempted to negotiate a deal to serve his own monetary interests and give up more of the brand to him to terminate his existing contractual obligations without cause. So basically, from what I heard at the event, someone else was talking about it. He, behind the scenes, was trying to renegotiate the deal. And then when he realized that he couldn't, then he sued them. And so if that is actually true, that is negotiating in bad faith.
Yep. Now, speaking of getting sued and MrBeast and being out there, something else has been out there. They don't really have to deal with lawsuits, but they're out there quite a bit, and they have been a ton in marketing, just like MrBeast. And they've been capturing actually more of the headlines than he has in recent days, and that is Barbie. The movie hit over $1 billion in box office revenue, which is crazy. And they outsourced a lot of their marketing as well. And Eric, do you want to cover that?
Yep. So on the screen over here, so this is written by Alex Garcia. He's a great marketer. So the real genius behind Barbie's success was in the $150 million marketing budget. The thing is, they pushed their licensing agreements to 100 plus brands. And I'm going to talk about what that means in a second. And I think this is pretty genius. This is why they felt everywhere. I don't know about you, Neil, but where I live close to a mall, and it was plastered everywhere. In Japan, you saw or Dubai, you saw a big Barbie, like one of those packages, and you can see kind of like a virtual Barbie walking out. So they collaborated with Airbnb, so you can rent Ken's dream house, Burger King, so the pink burger, Xbox, so custom hardware. And basically what happened was that they went in a different direction. And so I'm going to give an example over here. So usually, if you're like another toy company like Hasbro, for example, so they might have G.I. Joe, Dungeons and Dragons, Transformers, right? They fully control the marketing and the rights. And so they bought a production studio for $3.8 billion in 2019. Last year, they sold it for $500 million. So they lost $3.3 billion on that, right? So basically, Mattel, which owns Barbie, they crowdsourced their marketing and they maximized collaborations, and they gave a lot of creative freedom to the people that they're collaborating with. And that helped really push it. And I think, Neil, do you have numbers? I think it's one of the top grossing films. I think, Neil, you're trying to Google it right now, right?
I am trying to Google it right now.
Yeah, so I'll continue on while Neil finds it. So at the end of the day, it's creative genius from all these big companies. It's everyone combining to do something amazing to hit the numbers that they hit, because I think they blew everything out of the water because of their super strong marketing. And they rebranded Barbie. I actually didn't watch the movie, but I've heard what they've done with the movie is that they've repositioned Barbie as a company or a brand.
All right. Want to guess the worldwide number?
5 billion? I don't know.
No, $1,066,000,000. It's ridiculous.
How does that compare?
So for original release, I think for this year, or yearly, let's see what the yearly number one was Super Mario Brothers, then Top Gun, or actually it's not. Yeah, for this year, 2023, it was Super Mario Brothers. 2022 was Top Gun at 7 billion, which is crazy. But if I look at just this year, total gross, release date, number of theaters, and I don't know why it would be $7 billion. I don't know how they're looking at total gross versus average. But I'm using Box Office Mojo. I'm funny enough. Do you want me to share my screen? How do I share
go
my
ahead.
screen here?
Go ahead, hit the share thing.
The share screen, and where's Box Office Mojo? There you go. So you guys can see, right? So for 2023, it's saying top gross or total gross with Super Mario Brothers. When I click through on it, and this is why I want to share my screen, the total gross here shows 574 million.
I think that's total for the year of all movies.
Got it. But either way, yeah, you're probably right there. So number one was Super Mario Brothers. Number two was Barbie. Barbie did exceptionally well.
Barbie might win. So just stay on the screen real quick. Go back to it.
Let me see if that's true. Top Gun, yeah, you're right. It's just total gross for the whole year.
Okay. If we look at Barbie, so Super Mario is 574, and then Barbie is 492, right? But it came out in July.
This
July
is domestic, by the way. I'm pretty sure that this number right here is just domestic.
And then Mario has been out for a while, so I think Barbie might end up winning out. It might actually be the number one film for the year, and
which is crazy because no one would have ever guessed that. By the way,
no way.
You can see the time range, right? Super Mario Brothers has been out for a long time. April 5th. Barbie, July 21st.
It's not even a month.
Recording, yeah, it's not even a month.
Yep. And April, May, June, July, August, so 4.5 months for Mario. Let me share my screen and we can move on from here. So this is from Axios. And Barbie has earned more than $1 billion in worldwide box office sales, according to ComScore. And then it's the first film solely directed by a woman to ever cross 1 billion in global box office sales. That's great. And then 459 in North American tickets and 572 from theaters overseas. And no movie in Warner Brothers history, 100-year history, has sold so many tickets so fast. And I think a huge part of that has to go to marketing and how really a lot of people understand what Barbie is. So anyway, we'll move on from this one. We'll move on to the next subject. What is the next one, Neil?
Next subject is WP, which is one of the biggest ad agencies globally, has lowered their guidance. And there's an article on CMO that ends up breaking down or Wall Street Journal that ends up breaking down how WP is just seeing a slowdown in marketing. But the good news is they're optimistic, and so is Google and so is Facebook, about the rest of the year. So that's a good sign as well.
Have you read this one yet?
No, but I've read similar articles on WPP's guidance, and they all say different things. But the overall message is terrible first half of the year. People are seeing it slowly starting to rebound, and they're being a little bit more optimistic.
Okay, previously said, so for this year's projections, like for like revenue, less pass-through cost, to grow between 3 and 5% this year. Let's just call it revenue to simplify things, okay? Now it expects that figure to sit between 1.5 and 3% growth. And so the company's like-for-like revenue, less pass-through costs, grew at 2.3% in second quarter. And the main thing here that we want to take a look at is really this last sentence over here, right? So look, the tech, they lost like a chunk of, 18% of tech revenue. So lower spending in that area made an outsized impact on results. And he said, when the chief executive, Mark Reed, said, in the long run, that's a source of growth, talking about the tech sector, right? In the second quarter, there's no doubt that it hurt us. And so I think, look, in the long term, like things will be fine, and lowering guidance, like I understand. But I think Neil and I, remember we're talking to Mark Moss, who attended the mastermind. And we were both wondering, because Mark is really good, really understands macroeconomics. We're like, when do you think customer sentiment or consumer sentiment is going to change? Do you remember what his answer was?
No.
I don't remember his answer either, but I think he was still a little bearish, I would say. But we don't want to make predictions here because we've already done it on this podcast. We still say 50-50. So that's that. Now, the other thing I wanted to break down that's similar to this is what the venture market tells you about the markets right now. And so this comes from Tomasz Tunguz. He's a venture capitalist. And he's actually, what he's doing is he's taking data from Carta. And so Carta, they have a lot of cap tables. They do cap table management for startups, which means they will help organize who your investors are, how much equity they own, and all that type of stuff, right? So they released their state of the market report. And Tomasz said a few data points stood out to me. So those of you that can see the screen here. So down rounds constitute 20% of all rounds. That's up 2x from historical norms. So down rounds mean that when you raise more money, your company's valued at less. That's why it's called a down round. Bridge rounds account for 38% of all rounds in Q2. And then 2.9% of rounds recapitalize the company. Recaps effectively delete the previous cap table and start a new one. So the main point here is that these are all signs of the harder fundraising times. But the glass half view is that 80% of all rounds are flat or up. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I think things were really overvalued in the first place. So I just think it's coming back down into reality and a normalization.
Yep. And over here, look, time between rounds has jumped about 40%, which actually adds up to what Neil and I have been talking about, how sales cycles in general are longer, whether it's raising money or whether it's closing a deal if you're like a SaaS company or an agency company like ours. And this is roughly consistent with the lengthening in sales cycle software. There you go. Enduring with customers. Perhaps there's a parallel in buyer psychology in software and venture capital. The last point I'll make over here, and we can move on. So here, check this out. So last employees have exercised options at the lowest rate since the dawn of COVID at 26%, down from 46% 2 years ago. And basically, the investors are now waiting for employee confidence to come back, which is looking at sentiment, right? So the greater the employee confidence in a business, the more compelled an investor could be to lead a round.
Yep. So, dude, right now, what do you think is going to happen with venture capital funding and in the next 12 months, if you had a guess?
I think it's still, people are going to stay bearish and they're going to just wait. I think people are just continuing to wait and see. Like you and I, the reason we had that question was we're waiting and seeing right now, and our customers or our prospects are waiting and seeing. And so we just have to wait and see, because the thing is, all these rate increases, what are we at now? 5.25% or something like that. All these rate increases, I don't think we've actually seen the effects yet. We haven't seen the lagging effects of it yet. And so again, neither Neil and I are economists here, but this is just our best guess. So I don't know. I'm curious. What do you think?
Dude, I think you're gonna, once rates start going down, you're gonna start seeing things become more aggressive. But until then, I think you're gonna see the market being cautious and slow.
We had George Gammon speak at the event, and George Gammon has a YouTube channel with like 500K subs and another one with 150K. And he mainly focuses on talking about macroeconomics. And still, his base case is stagflation, which means the economy stagnating with a case of inflation in there. And, what he was saying is, look, anytime the yield curve, has inverted, and so we don't want to get too much in macro here, but when the yield curve has inverted, meaning that I believe it's short-term rates, you get a better return than long-term rates, there always is a recession afterwards, besides one case. I don't know, like there's always exceptions to the rule, but his case is still that. And I think it's still the same thing with Mark Moss as well. So I'm cautiously optimistic. That's what I'll say. I don't know about you, Neil.
Yep. No, totally. Dude, I'm optimistic as well. But time will tell. But neither you and I, like you said, are economists, nor do we know what's going to really happen.
Yep. So the last thing we want to talk about here is, Neil, I don't think I sent you this episode, but Gail, I think Breton maybe from Authority Hackers, he did a really good podcast with an ex-SEO strategist at Forbes, and they actually do a lot of interesting stuff. Do you know about this? Do you know what they do with their SEO, Neil?
I don't.
Okay. So they actually spend more time on updating content versus new content creation, and they mainly focus on VIP pages that drive a lot of revenue. So an example of this might be Best Home Warranty, right? And so they have entire teams that just focus on these money pages and not as much on new content creation because they just have so much authority. And there's a lot of internal linking going on. They don't mind about the anchor text. Like they're pretty aggressive with internal linking anchor text. And they use a tool called a Versionista to monitor competitor changes. And so, for example, let's say Neil ranked number 1 for the keyword marketing agency, right? And I wanted to rank number 1 for that keyword. Then I might just use Versionista and monitor Neil's pages and see how it's affecting see what changes he's making. And maybe I can cross-reference that with how he's ranking on that page as well over time. So those are just a couple of things I thought was really interesting. Definitely go check out that podcast. And yeah, I don't know. I'm just fasting. Now I'm like, maybe we should just hire people from Forbes.
Forbes has done really well, but they also have a really strong brand, which does help their SEO, and people take that for granted. If you have a lot of brand queries being that when someone does a Google search, they may search your brand name. If you look at a lot of the most popular search queries on the web, they're like Gmail, YouTube, Amazon, Facebook. These are all brand names. And the more brand queries that you get, we've seen a direct correlation with higher rankings as well.
Dude, Neil, do you remember eHow or eZine articles?
Back in the day, yes.
Yeah, and that is an example
anymore, but yes,
they just rank for everything, right? They were like authority sites back then, but they just had really thin content. That is known as like a gray hattish thing, right? But this is like a gray hattish thing done in a white hat way. Forbes is a really good example.
Yep.
Wait, let me show you. I forgot to pull this up over here. So this is Forbes. Like you can see, in the month of July, they published 1,900 new pages, and they republished 613. In June, they published new pages, 2,400, and they republished 1,000. It's a lot.
It's a lot. Updating your content does really well. That's what Wikipedia does so well.
Neil, I actually looked at yours too. Let's look at yours. So like here, published once, 97, republished 156. Your ratio is higher. So
for my ratio for what? I can't read. Published.
So new page. Okay, so in June of 2023,
my republish is higher than new.
Correct.
Yeah, that sounds right.
So anyway, is that the list for this week? That is the list for this week. Oh wait, there's one more thing before we get out of here. Our mutual friend Syed actually showed me this. I'm gonna check this out. Have you heard of this one? I'm just gonna show one of these tools over here. Actually, I'll show two because we're nice. So have you heard of Rask.ai?
I have from your event.
Oh, that's right. All right. So we can thank Syed for that. All right, here we go. You see this?
Yeah.
All right. So basically, let's say we have this podcast over here. We can now translate video and audio with AI fast, fun. And so here's an example of those of you that can see or listen.
Hey there. Here is a quick demo of Rask AI tool for video localization. Hola, aquí hay una demostración rápida de la herramienta Rusk AI para la localización de videos. Hallo, hier ist eine kurze Demo des Rusk AI Tools für die Videolokalisierung.
So what the video is pretty much showing is they can take any of your video content with you in there, and they can end up dubbing it and changing it to a different language using a similar voice so it doesn't sound funny or anything like that. And it's a great way to just get more traffic from YouTube or any of the social profiles. Just dub your content to different languages.
Dude, you didn't let me get to your language. Hold on a second.
Hey, pour la localisation de vidéo. सुनिए, यहाँ वीडियो स्थानीयकरण के लिए रस्क AI टूल का त्वरित डेमो दिया गया.
Anyway, so that's that. They actually have Chinese as well. And then there's this other one where, check this out, you can add a mask. So this video over here, I'm just going to hit play. You know what? I'm going to kill this. So this video over here, you can see this woman, she got changed into like a Asian model. And just by typing into a search word, look, Asian model, fuller lips, right? This is crazy. And so I can, let's say, for example, I want to become like a supermodel or something like that. I can do this. And this is called brask.ai/mask. So rask.ai and brask.ai with the B. These are a couple tools that you can check out. I think the dubbing thing is an interesting angle because it works really well on YouTube. In fact, MrBeast does this a lot, right? And he grows really quickly on other channels. So that is it for this week. We hope you enjoyed this reaction video. We'll be doing a lot more of these. And let us know what you think. And if you want to see us do the Marketing School live general conference open up to the public, just tweet at me or DM me, and then we'll work on figuring it out. So anything else?
That's it. Take care, everyone. Make sure you rate, review this podcast. We love our 5-star ratings. We really appreciate everything.